Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. Joining us now, finally, it's his debut as he's running for Congress in the 25th District in the great state of California. Check it out. Cenk Uygur, the founder of the Young Turks. Cenk, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Appreciate it, brother.
Of course. I'm really happy you're doing this. When did you decide to do it and why?
I decided to do it about 4 or 5 days after Katie Hill announced her resignation. And it's because nobody would talk about the one issue that affects everything, and it was driving me crazy. So it's bribery. Nobody would call it what it is. Campaign contributions from corporations and from lobbyists are obviously bribes. So no one in the media says it, obviously outside of the progressive online media. And unfortunately, none of the politicians say it, not even our greatest allies and the best progressives in the country. And I know why, because now that I'm saying it in the campaign, I was in a radio interview yesterday with more of an establishment supporting figure, and he was mortified. He said, do you realize how offensive that is to say that these politicians that we know and cherish? He didn't say cherish, but still.
I was going to say, wow, Cenk, Jesus. You got to, if he said cherish, you got to tell us who you were talking to.
Yeah, no, seriously, he legitimately said that these politicians that we know, are you saying they're corrupt? That is deeply offensive. Well, no, it's not offensive that I'm calling them corrupt. It's offensive that they are corrupt.
Right.
So, and that drives every other issue. So the school shootings, the environment, Medicare for all, every single issue is affected by the fact that these folks are taking bribes from the industries they're supposed to be regulating and the policies they're supposed to be setting in those industries.
When you go out on I'm assuming that you're really getting a peek, like the contrast between how the establishment media and corporate Democrats, whatever other terms we throw out there, versus the actual human beings that you're campaigning with. I'm assuming the difference is like night and whatever the highest point of sun day is.
Yeah, 1,000,000% right. So when I say bribes in any form of regular media, they're like, oh, right? When I say it in front of people, every time it's been literally from 15-year-old high school students to grandmas. They'll point at me and go, yeah, that's right. That's what the problem is. And it's because just like when we started TYT and the whole network, it's an oasis in the desert. Nobody will say the most obvious things. So, I mean, you name an issue. I was on a show that the person is a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. And I told him, the Democratic position is the one that the great majority of Americans support on almost every issue. And he looked at me skeptically no. The establishment Democrats have been telling me my whole life that we're losers and we're the minority and this is a center-right country. No, what do you mean we're right? Look at any of the polling, man. Of course we're right. So, I mean, look at what they hide right now. Medicare for All poll, New York Times poll, 55% for the whole country. 64% of all independents want Medicare for All after it took a battering from the $6 million in ads in the insurance companies that they spent and the Republicans spent and the entire Republican Party and the entire mainstream media and everyone but 2 of the 27 Democrats running for president. After that battering, 64% of the independents still go, no, I still like it.
Right.
Yeah, I want Medicare for all. And when do you ever see that on television? Like the New York Times won't even report on its own poll. After they do that poll, they'll be like, okay, we're done with it. I guarantee you in the rest of the articles, they'll talk about how it's unpopular, which makes no sense.
And I would just say, not only is it bribery, taking a duffel bag of money is actually cooler for anybody who's seen Goodfellas. But
no, by the way, Michael, to your point, that's why I say unfortunate. I love this country, and some people get on me for that, but it's got a massive set of problems, but it's got these wonderful advantages too. But they've ruined it by making us one of the most corrupt countries in the world, because the other countries have the decency to at least make bribery illegal. And there's at least some chance that you could get caught and go to jail. Whereas in America, we legalize bribes. We just call them campaign contributions.
Can you talk about that actually for a couple of minutes? That's one of the things I want to hit. One of the guests I have on TMBS, one of our sort of mentors, is Professor Harvey Kaye. And I think that actually it is super important. I'm on the, socialist, hard left, whatever the hell you want to call it. I focus a lot on foreign policy, obviously. But I think, first of all, it's insane in general that you wouldn't, wherever you are, say that there has to be some version of the tradition that one comes from that works and is positive. That's why I never liked the Islamophobic stuff. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but it's like you got to align with progressive Muslims as an example, because they're the ones who have the credibility to sell the argument in different contexts that, this stuff can be compatible with human rights, as an example, right? So not to get too far afield, America does have a radical, progressive, really revolutionary tradition. Marx understood that the Civil War was revolutionary. The founding fathers, we all know their endless sins. In the context of their world, they were overthrowing monarchies and religious orders. And of course, there's FDR, and of course, there's labor and Eugene Debs and all this stuff. So I'll stop in a second, but I think that that's really important. And I know you've been hammering that. So I'd like you to talk about that, actually, your love of the country and how you fit in that tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. So, by the way, Grion Harvey K just interviewed him about a week ago on
Awesome.
TYT. Yeah. And so, again, the interview from yesterday, because it took an hour and a half, so it's still fresh in my memory. And the person there was making the argument that incrementalism is pragmatic. Trying to go for big change is not practical and doesn't get you results. And I challenged them and asked them, really, let's look at American history and see what's gotten us real change. Did FDR say, let's do Social Security for those who want it?
Right.
Did he say, let's just do a tiny bit of Social Security? Let's just dip our toe in Social Security? No, he went for big change and arguably radical change. And he got it because he fought for it. Martin Luther King,
Yep.
Don't take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. We need the fierce urgency of now. And what happened? We got the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act with the fierce urgency of now. The American history is filled with folks who went for big change, including the founding fathers, who said, hey, we're not going to plead with the King of England. We're not going to ask pretty please. We're not going to have a beer summit. We're going to do an actual revolution. So but I tell you, today the Democratic Party would say, no, the founding fathers were incrementalists. They knew the tiny little bit of change. You pick up one musket at a time. No.
One musket at a time. I like that.
Right. You go for the history of this country is all about radical change and progressives leading to expanding the circle of liberty.
Right.
And I think that's what is at the core of progressivism.
Yep.
So just like you said, Michael, the founding fathers had a million faults, but in their own context, they expanded the circle of liberty. Now, it was a tiny expansion, but a really, really important groundbreaking one. It went from king and lords. The Magna Carta took it from the king to the lords, and then the Constitution took it from the lords to basically property to white men. But that was a giant leap forward at that time. And then what did we do? And remember, they put in the Constitution, we were supposed to strive for a more perfect union. They built revolution into the Constitution because they were revolutionaries. And the revolution is amendments. They said, instead of picking up muskets like we did, you can actually do political revolutions, and you should every generation, and you should amend this document depending on the times, which was really incredible foresight. And we've done it on many occasions. One more example, the suffragette movement.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
People say today getting money out of politics through an amendment is impossible. First of all, over 90% of Americans agree with us that we should get rid of private financing of elections and that politicians shouldn't serve their donors. So that's impossible? My God, you've got low standards. The suffragette movement, their idea was we're going to get the right to vote for women when they don't have the right to vote. That's impossible. That's totally impossible. Let alone 2/3 of Congress or the states calling for an amendment and 3/4 of the states ratifying when women can't even vote. Totally, utterly impossible. And they did it. And they didn't do it by going for little change, not for a bill here, a post office there. No, they went for big change, an amendment to get the right to vote, and they won. And all throughout American history, progressives have fought for big change and won, and we have been resisted by conservatives who are the Washington Generals of American history. We are the Globetrotters. Their job is to lose to us. Unfortunately, the corporate Democrats have switched sides, and now they serve their donors just like the Republicans do. So when they tell me to be quiet and not fight back against the establishment Democrats because they are my so-called colleagues or they are my leaders, which is hilarious, I say hell no.
Absolutely. And I also think I want to also mention Lincoln. I mean, literally a second founding of the country. And we don't want to have something. I mean, the Civil War was horrible, but you literally have through the 14th Amendment. That's actually the expansion of the circle that says the individual becomes sovereign over states. That's the next expansion. Then, of course, the New Deal. I mean, I just want to reiterate that what you're talking about is super rooted in the history. And anybody who says otherwise, hasn't done the reading, or they've only read, I don't know, like MSNBC coffee table stuff. I want to not to go. I won't go too far because you're running for office.
No. And look, that's the other thing that's throwing people for a loop.
Yes.
They've never seen a non-politician run for office.
Right.
So they keep waiting for me to equivocate and, hem and haw. No, I'm coming 100 miles per hour, and they just don't know what to do with it.
Can we talk? I got two more questions for you. I do want to touch on the foreign policy dimension. I don't think that you can separate the achievements we need to have at home, Medicare for all, expanding Social Security, all of these types of things that you're talking about. Then obviously climate and ecology is a global issue. It's a state and national and local one too. You can't separate it from the question of U.S. empire. And I also think there's a very specific dimension that I think needs more and more attention, which is our conduct in the Caribbean and Latin America and our own neighborhood, which unfortunately we've caused just endless damage to, including by undermining some very successful modern leaders like Lula da Silva, who obviously I've talked about a lot. And I mean, basically, Cenk, just what would your role be in Congress on war and peace, on debt relief, on those types, on political prisoners, that type of thing?
Yeah. So first, let me explain here. Look, when you're running for Congress, as I am in the 25th District of California, you have to keep your constituents in mind at all times.
Yep.
And so the question that you're asking almost never comes up because it's foreign policy. But it should come up because it does affect the constituents in the 25th District, even if it's not top of mind for the media there. Because it's all about priorities. So are we spending our money on full and fair funding of the schools in Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, Palmdale, Lancaster, et cetera? Or are we spending it on wars of aggression for no reason at all? Are we sending our troops to go die totally pointlessly? Look at Afghanistan. 18 years. What the hell did we accomplish? Nothing. Nothing. We're right back to where we started 18 years later. The only thing that got accomplished is that a lot of defense contractors got really, really, really rich. Yep. And so that's the reality of it. And there's defense contractors in my industry, a lot of them. So people expected me to say, well, my past positions. No. Look, you could have incredibly bright engineers that work there and at the same time have leadership push for wars that we don't need and get some of those, at least at the troop level, those folks killed for their own purposes. And it's outrageous. And then, the Politico wrote an article the other day about how Bernie Sanders supports far left leaders. Whoa, right?
Right.
Far left leaders. Okay, let's take Lula from Brazil, one of the people that you mentioned. He had a popularity of 80%.
Definitely anybody watching this knows that.
I know that.
Yes.
So, isn't it amazing that the mainstream media, they say, all of your positions as progressives in America poll at 60% or higher. A lot of them are 2/3 or 3/4 of the country support them. Yep. But you guys are the radical left. Right. And Lula da Silva sits there at 80% approval, and they're like the radical left. So I guess 80% of Brazil is the radical left. They say it with a straight face. They really do. It's amazing. They have their own version of alternative facts. And so they make fun of Donald Trump. You kidding me? Look at the mirror. So yes, by the way, they should definitely make fun of Donald Trump.
And look in the mirror. You can do all of it.
They should also realize that they have their own alternative facts. So on foreign policy, I will support justice, both for its own sake. So, for example, with the Palestinians, I agree with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren at this point, who say that if you don't stop the settlements, there will be consequences in terms of our foreign aid and assistance, not because we're trying to hurt Israel, but because we're trying to help Israel get to a peace process. And in order to do that, we've got to get, pressure their own right-wing government, and now hopefully a little less right-wing since the elections, but also to help the Palestinians, because the Palestinians also deserve dignity and respect. And I won't tolerate anyone going around and treating them as subhuman, as unfortunately so much of Congress has done for decade after decade. So I will fight back on every single one of those issues. And guys, look, I'm going to make a slight pitch here for donations and volunteers. That's because when I say stuff like this, the corporate contributions to my opponents skyrocket. So then the defense contractors and all the different industries and all the different special interests pour money into the corporate Democrats' coffers to make sure that I lose. So that's why I need your guys' help. Individual donations makes all the difference. Volunteers makes all the difference. So my website is cenk2020.com. If we all band together, we could definitely do this, but we do need to band together. Otherwise, these guys will steamroll us with money.
All right, that's perfect. Final minute, Cenk, and we'll plug it again, cenk2020.com. How does this fit? You endorsed Bernie Sanders. You've got people like Ilhan Omar and AOC and Rashida Tlaib starting some of this fight in Congress, and other Congress people in different areas. So you would be, I think what we all like and are excited about is you would be the Lone Ranger if you needed to be, but you also are part of this bigger fight that's happening. So how do you see it in terms of this run and the bigger struggle and the bigger picture?
Yeah. Look, I hope it doesn't sound too haughty, but I think that anybody that knows me knows that that there's certainly a possibility that this could happen. So the way that I see it is on the night of Trump's election, I didn't get sad like a lot of other people. I got mad.
Right.
And I didn't get mad at Trump. Trump is what he is. He's a monster. He's a moron. I can go on, and I have for year after year, calling him every name in the book. I got mad at the Democratic Party for losing to such a buffoon. And so they told us for our whole lives, you progressives don't know anything, okay? We in the establishment know how to win elections. We're pragmatic. We're practical. And we have handpicked Hillary Clinton in our infinite genius. Well, it turns out they were wrong and they were stupid. And they ran the wrong candidate, and she was about the only person in the country who could lose to Donald Trump. And so that night I told the audience, well, look, these Democratic leaders, they're totally and utterly incompetent. But they're sitting on this giant aircraft carrier called the Democratic Party. So let's pull our pirate ship up next to it and board the carrier and take the ship, because the Democratic Party doesn't belong to them. It belongs to progressives. Through FDR and every other Democrat that has fought for progressives, whether it was LBJ on the domestic level with the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and Medicaid, whether it was JFK resisting wars of aggression, all the way through. That is what the Democratic Party actually stands for, progressives. They claim, no, Democratic Party stands for corporate donors and appeasing Republicans. Preposterous. They're 100% wrong. So what have we done since? So, well, then I co-founded the Just Democrats, and we landed basically 7 folks inside the aircraft carrier. And they have been mighty. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, but also 3 incumbents, Ro Khanna, Raul Grijalva, and Pramila Jayapal. Okay, now we'll take those 7 over the rest of Congress combined. And so now we're on the ship. So that's the first wave. The second wave is me, because it's a special election. So it stands on its own when there is no other elections other than the presidential primaries. If I get into Congress, you know how I'm going to be. Politically, rhetorically, I'm going to be a blowtorch. And they're not going to be able to stop me. And they're going to try to offer me committee positions or whatever little morsels off their table. Like, oh, don't want Cenk. Hey, will it try to appease you? No way, man. I'm going to call out McConnell. I'm going to call out Pelosi. I'm going to call out whoever needs to be called out and call out the corruption that's infesting this country. I hope that that gives space to the other Just Democrats to then be even bolder than they've been. And then the third wave is in November when we land new Justice Democrats onto the ship. And by the end, we'll be so strong. I mean, imagine 12 of us, 15 of us in Congress. I'd definitely take it over the other 400 in a second. We're going to run roughshod because why is AOC and all of them so popular? Because they're uncorrupted. They don't have to appease donors. That was the magic answer. Our only litmus test at Just Democrats was no corporate PAC money. And it has made all of the difference. Now, imagine instead of 7 of them, there are 12, 15, 20 of them that are that strong and all running super aggressively and telling people the truth. They couldn't possibly stop us. We'll take over the Democratic Party and make it strong and make it progressive again.
Cenk2020.com, Cenk2020.com. Too strong. Cenk Uygur, thanks, brother. Good luck, man.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. You just watched a Michael Brooks Show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.